Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today. Gavin and I just met. He's authored a couple books, one called Man Alive, which I just checked out, looks awesome, and another one called A Rite of Passage. So he's an author. He coaches men on finding their purpose, but he came from boxing. That was what he did for many years. He has 7 kids. Yes, 7 kids. Married to his wife since they met when they were teenagers. Well, they didn't get married as teenagers, but they met as teenagers. So that's pretty cool. And his thing is all about helping people become better men. So if you're listening to this and you're a man, pay really close attention. If you know a man, share this episode. I know it's going to be good. Thanks for being on the podcast today, Gavin.
Thank you so much for having me. It's amazing to speak to somebody in Canada. I love Canada.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, let's get into your story. We chatted just briefly before that your parents were entrepreneurs buying and selling businesses. Um, was it kind of like sink or swim famine, or were you pretty like, I'm just curious, when you buy and sell businesses, was kind of money there one day and then the next day it wasn't there? I'm curious how that kind of, I'm in the money space, so I'm always curious how
Okay,
that was.
great. Well, I suppose even before they brought their first business, I remember as a young fella, even in primary school, them always buying and selling things. They had a farm. I remember as a kid, they were like my parents would buy cattle during the week and then sell it for a profit on the weekends. My dad, we had chickens where he'd have 500 chickens. He'd be selling eggs at different places. And so I think sometimes they always made a way. But when they first got their first businesses in a fish and chip shop, it was like I don't think they realized that it wasn't working that well. So they were kind of forced to do things to get it, make it happen. But that taught them a skill. And obviously it was all hands on deck. Me, my sister, everyone helped. But then they ended up they done really well, and they brought an amazing house. Then they swapped that house actually. I think my parents very wheelers and dealers, they swapped that house for a caravan park that had a service station on the front, and then they got that going. So I suppose I I think at times it was, to answer your question, it was tough, but I remember my dad. My dad's amazing. So I mean, obviously my mum is as well, but my dad was a great motivational kind of speaker. Even when I was playing sport as a kid, I was into horses, where I actually become an Australian champion with barrel racing and flag and barrel. My dad was just a great, I suppose, he was a great validation giver. So yeah, he had pubs and he always just made stuff happen. I remember he'd just say, like some people wait for doors to open, we kick them open. That was his
That was how
attitude.
you were raised. Wow, that's so cool. Okay.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
but
And then what got you into boxing? Because that's really where you went into, and was that pretty quick out of school? And tell us a little bit about that journey. It's competitive, obviously super competitive, also super rough. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that journey.
it's funny you say about being competitive. Like because I never felt as though I was competitive. Like I was never competing. And that's, I suppose, the mindset I
Interesting.
picked up from great coaches, because I always went off the principle you either create or you compete. But when you create, there is no competition. So it was always about me improving myself. So, but how I kind of got into that was completely different to that. There was, because we were moving. Well, I remember my parents brought a business, one of the business, when they were 14. And I mean, you go to a new town, you want to hang out with the cool kids. Anyway, long story short, I got invited to this party, was much older than me, and I ended up getting beaten up in the backyard and just humiliated. And I was drunk and I was blacked out, and it was just I thought was the worst night of my life, you know, and that sort of sent me on a bit of a, I had birthed anger, resentment, etc. But carrying on like that for a while, my dad ended up, because my dad was a fighter for a period of time when he was younger. And then he took me to the boxing gym. He said, "We're going to teach you how to fight." So it was like a duck to water. Like that was when I was 16, and I fought for a few years as an amateur. But I suppose I didn't know it at the time, but I had a problem with alcohol. Like I knew there was problems. I just thought they were everyone else. I
Right,
didn't
right.
realize it was me. So that was a real turning point. Getting to the boxing gym and really being able to give my all to something, opposed to giving my all to anger, resentment, and trying to square things up. And so that was an amazing experience. But and I suppose I talk about this in my books as well. There's always life is about seasons, and which we know seasons in business, seasons in as being an athlete, seasons in marriage, raising children. It's always transferring from one season to the other. And that's where I see probably even today, men that stay in one season far too long. or try and rush. What's that old saying? You can't plant and harvest in the same season. There's a process with our masculine journey. And I suppose transitioning from those teenage years and fueling it with alcohol, I turned left instead of right many times. But I remember having this thought. I remember thinking I met one of my parents had this caravan park, and I met these guys that were all around the world, were traveling from all around the world. And I kind of thought, wow, I'd never known anybody, they'd done that. So I remember booking, a ticket from one side of the world to the other. Yeah, through Asia, I went through the Himalayas, I went up in Europe, and the truth is, I found out what was holding me back. I found out my blind spots, and it nearly killed me, to be honest. So it was another season that needed to change. So hence, when I had to get sober, and that's when I met my first mentor in my early 20s, and he said to me, he goes, "Son, there's something in you that only you can fulfill. There's a mission, there's a purpose." And I knew what he meant. I just didn't know how to put everything together. And that's when he started to speak to me about and started to show me about these rite of passages, this transition from boy to man. So, so man, 30 years later, man, I'm still on the journey.
So
Like we all,
that was a lot of information in a short amount of time.
yes,
So if anyone's listening, you're probably thinking that too. So let's go back. So you mentioned you realized alcohol was a problem when you were 16. Is that right?
I got to the boxing gym. Everyone around me knew
Okay. When did you
alcohol.
realize that alcohol was a problem and what caused you to realize it was a problem?
I suppose, my parents got great values, and I grew up with your word is your bond. And that really, I realized I was saying one thing but doing another. And that was obviously hurting the people around me, but it was hurting me as well. Because I knew that I was better than that. So that was one thing. And the fact that, I was a blackout drinker, and I started drink driving and I wouldn't even know. There was a range of different things.
So one
Yeah,
of the things was that you would give your word and you wouldn't keep it because you'd be drunk
that's right.
or be
That's
hungover or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And you realize that yourself. I know alcohol, the reason I'm touching on this, alcoholism is a huge thing in our society. And I've realized this. And so I just think this is powerful. So when you finally decided that it was a problem, what got you, did you cut it out completely? Tell us a little bit about your journey of what you had to do. And maybe you still do drink. I don't know. Do you still drink at all?
No.
No. Okay, so you cut
One,
it out.
one,
You cut it out completely. So what was it? What helped you cut it out completely? You said you talked to a mentor.
yeah.
And what age are you about? Like you said, I really because
I
I
was
just think this is such a
22.
thing.
I was very fortunate to find that guy at 22. Man, I was
22.
so
Okay, so you're
fortunate.
young.
And I found him in I went to a psychologist, a doctor. He said there's nothing I can do for your son. The only place for you is this 12-step program. And I literally nearly punched him out. I was so angry that I'm
Right.
paying him good money. I wanted a magic wand, I think. But this mentor was in this 12-step program, but I knew him from the boxing gym. That I knew of him. I didn't really know. I
Okay.
knew him to say hello, but he knew me, more than I knew him. But I had respect because he was a champion fighter back in the day. He was a lot older.
Right.
But one of the things he started to introduce me then to other men in a 12-step program, and then and more so in going through these rites of passages. So it was like I was doing both. But what I picked up off one of those guys was around creating your personal oaths, your personal agreements. I talk about it a lot. It's the first pillar in the Rite of Passage for the Modern Man, that ebook. And basically I sort of picked half of it up off him. He would say around alcohol and drugs, not any, not ever. And
And
and for
how
me,
long did it take you to actually cut it?
straight away.
Like actually get rid of it, never drink again?
First time, the first meeting I went to, so I didn't know I didn't know alcohol was the problem. And
Okay.
when I went to that first meeting, I actually thought the first couple of people I heard speak, I actually thought my wife, who was my girlfriend then, I thought she'd give me, I thought she told everyone about me. I thought I'm going to kill her when I get home. But after a couple more speakers, I thought, I'm just like them. They're telling, they're just talking their story. So it was like a light bulb moment. Hang on, this is my problem. So then I says to this mentor, I said, like, I thought, what do I got to do? And when he said there's something in you, it was like, I think this is my second chance. I thought, this is what I've been hoping for, praying for, looking for. This is my second chance. So I said, what have I got to do? And he said, listen, don't drink between now and tomorrow. And I'll tell you, I'll give you the next bit of information. I said, yeah, all right, I won't do that, but give it to me now. Like I need it now. So I was so hungry to do what. So I started doing a meeting every day. I started talking to him every day. I started reading books. Then what I did was I got back to the gym. So I would run, I would go to a meeting, I would train, then I would do a bit of work. And it was just that on repeat for like about 18 months. And then I got an opportunity to fight on Fox Sports here in Australia. And I like I was all I could do was like the best I could do. I had a job washing dishes, right? For not much money. You don't get much money.
Just enough to get by.
Yeah, just enough. But it was just God's provision, really. And then I remember washing dishes one night. And I mean, it was at the point where the gentleman who owned the restaurant, I was trying to get a job as a waiter, trying to get out the kitchen, and he wouldn't give me an opportunity. Like that was the best I could do. Right. And then there was an opportunity to fight on Fox Sports. I won that fight. I come in the next night to wash more dishes, and he goes, was that you I seen on TV last night? And yeah, it was. I just walked out the back, put my apron on, and kept washing dishes because there was hundreds of plates coming at me. But that was just an opportunity like that I grabbed, but I was ready. It was because I suppose I was putting those days into weeks, weeks into months, and getting a year and a half in. But I created that oath. Not any, not ever, no negotiation. I was not up for
And one day
negotiation.
at a time, and you did it every day with him for 18 months.
No, I'd done it for
Well,
a
you've
long
done it since, but that was 18 months was where it kind of actually became a habit
time.
on your own.
Well, Do you know
What's
what?
it?
I just kept building because in that first 6 months, and this was why I had to get a job washing dishes, because in that first 6 months, we had to get food vouchers. And we didn't just have to get food vouchers because the government payments would last us about 10 days, but they would come every 14 days. So it got to the point where I had to lie to the old Catholic priest to get two food vouchers because one wasn't enough. Like that was another rock bottom when I thought I was going well. But then between that and then when I was like between 4.5, 5 years sober, that's when I got that's when I become the Australian champion. That's when I got the opportunity to fight for a Commonwealth title fight in Edmonton, Canada. That's when,
Mm.
and that fight's on YouTube as well. Tony Badias, Gavin Topp, but then I went from food vouchers to 5 years later, we own four houses. I own my own business. I realized, you know, you get to create what you want. You get to create your own opportunities. And God come to me and God looked after me. God showed me the way. There's no other way for it. That's hence we won. I do a challenge for men, level up, a 4 or 5 day challenge. Level up in your family, your business, and your faith. Because I tell you what, I ended up fighting for 18 years and I would not have been able to do that without my faith. But faith requires courage. Yeah, to live out
Gotcha.
for me, when I made an oath to my wife, you got to, I made an oath. I got my word back that we're going to be married forever. You've got to die to get out of this marriage. That's the commitment I'm giving you. That's the commitment I'm asking for. And I said, don't even try and die because I will raise you from the dead woman. And
Well,
she laughed, but
let's touch on that. So you went from 5 years, kind of being broke to doing okay. I mean, obviously you talked about God, your faith and all that kind of stuff. Were there some tangible things that you would recommend someone could do, um, that would help them? Maybe they're listening to this and they're feeling like they're struggling and life sucks and things are in the dumps and maybe they're struggling with addictions also. Maybe yes, maybe no, whatever. What are some of the things that you think would help someone listening to this? So in 5 years from now, possibly their life could be, well, not possibly, their life could be completely different.
Yeah. Well, change happens in an instant. It can happen with I make a decision. I create an oath, like I talked about in that Rite of Passage book, create an oath. I remember another famous Canadian, Bob Proctor. I remember getting some of his tapes in 97. I got sober in 95 and I got his tapes in 97. And I remember listening to him. But I remember around that process, I made another oath to be a lifelong learner. I ain't ever going to stop learning. I remember a mentor saying to me, this masculine journey will take about 80 or 90 years to get a handle on. On the provision that you continue to grow and learn. So I would say, what I say is every day, right action, right direction, learn something useful. Yeah, serve somebody who needs some help. I talk about my Rite of Passage book again. I believe we need three men or three groups of men, or even women. We need to receive from somebody, a mentor, a coach, a father figure, somebody to show us the way. But what's crucial, we need to feel that unconditional love. We need to receive. That's how we receive. We need men, we need people, community on the same level, on the same page, but we must understand each other's mission and purpose. That's why we complement, we help each other. Community. And then
Awesome.
the third bloke, we need to be helping somebody, lifting somebody up. I think if we've got those three, like that's community. But most people, most men, particularly that I meet, they find these stages in their life where they endeavor to become a lone wolf. They try and work stuff out themselves. And of course, you know, we're all governed by our limitations. Unfortunately, that's where we stay. So I would say every day look for somebody to serve and help. Every day look to be served and help, be that and create community, find those people that inspire you. That, one of the things I do with our mentorship program, I always talk about structure, discipline, and accountability. And because you can have those first two things, but if you don't have people that you're accountable to, you'll end up operating at average. And I think that's probably what my parents really honed in on when I was growing up. They found businesses that were trying to do it on their own. So they, as though they've been there too long and got tired. But when you have that accountability to keep leveling up, different life, different business.
Awesome. I love that. Going back quite a ways, you talked about how you didn't really compete. You're not super competitive. Thought that was interesting. You talked about creation. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, when I would fight, like people would say to me things to me, because one of the things when I retired as a fighter in 2007, I actually created a boxing program that I did from 2009 to 2019. And it was, imagine this, a boxing program. And the main fight was at the local casino in Australia on the Gold Coast, right? But the qualifier was that you'd never had a fight. Right? That was like insane to think you're going to fight in front of 1,000 people, but you've never fought before. But what people would say to me, I could never have a boxing career. I could never either get that angry or I could never I would never want to hurt anybody or beat anybody up. But I never looked at boxing. I was always about creating something new and fresh in me, becoming a better man, a better husband, a better father, a better son, a better leader, a better sportsman. That's what I mean. But I was always about creating things in me so I could pursue and become a better man, really, opposed to, see, for me, my observation around being competitive, meaning somebody must lose so I can win. And
Right.
I think that's a lack mentality. But almost when you're in business, I believe, it's got to be a win-win situation. When people do my programs, and particularly a lot of entrepreneurs do our programs, particularly our 12-month mastermind, for example, I say to them, because a lot of men find their purpose or their new purpose and end up developing it into a business. They give so much value from their purpose, it turns into a business. Okay. So it's got to be a win-win. So I say, whatever money you spend with me, my goal, my vision is that it would be 10x. You would 10x it. So yeah, so we have a range of different programs, and like, for example, one guy I'm working with at the moment, he's a doctor in California. He recently just flew over here to the Mediterranean, and we're working out a way, because he's in his hospital. They deliver over 400 babies a month. Not just him,
Oh
there's a
my.
range of doctors. Yeah, it's amazing. So we're working out a way, because he's so passionate, loves women, loves babies, loves making better families. He's like, so we're making something online that serves women so they have a better pregnancy, they have a better birth, they get set up a lot better, so they're going to potentially avoid that afterwards sometimes that depression comes in. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
That was a lot. Yeah, interesting. And so, how do you feel? Because that is very unusual, especially coming from a competitive environment. Um, Was that how you were raised, or was that your coach when you started into boxing that pointed you in that direction? Like, if you think back to when you first started, and you got beat up, at 14, and that's kind of what got you into it. So I feel like you would have started out a little bit of like, I'm here to protect myself, I'm here to win, I feel like. And somehow it shifted, and it sounds like it shifted fast to creating. Do you remember what it was that something happened that you changed it from like protection and self-defense and stuff like that to creating the best version of yourself? So unusual.
I think there was maybe a range of different things, but like I said before, my dad was amazing, and he would always.
Hmm.
It's almost like there was no expectations. I remember being in these stables. As I said, I rode horses when I was younger. He got me into horses,
Hmm.
and I remember being in a spot. I was 14, but my horse was that good. I was actually competing in the opens. I qualified for the open races, like I was competing against adults. And I remember it was the main. It was like a round robin thing over a week, at this event, this horse show. And I remember, said I'm there, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and I burst into tears. I'm saying, and I'm 14, we're in the stables, and my dad goes, "Listen, mate, I love you. You don't have to do it. You have to win. You have to do anything. Just do your best. Your best is enough." And I think that really, like, I'd already won. I got there. I'd already achieved much more than I ever thought I could. I think
Hmm.
that maybe, and I think as I went along, I went the other way where I was angry, I was resentful, I wanted to get people back, and so I kind of had both. And like you get to choose your own life. Where I wanted to really, particularly when I got into boxing, and particularly in my 20s when I found sobriety and got that mentorship, what I learnt was you can do a lot more with love and grace than anger and resentment you know.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think there was a range of different things. But particularly when I ran that boxing program for 10 years, where literally what it turned into, it started off as a boxing program, but over time I realized what really men needed was it ended up being an initiation and validation program. But you just got to punch up all the way through it and test your character. You know, that's what I
Hmm.
believe in. The DNA of every man is a warrior. We're designed for battle. That's actually where our best comes out. But there's two sorts of warriors. There's trained and there's untrained. And I think a lot of people that are untrained in that area, they second guess themselves. They don't have the confidence. They feel like they have to pull
Yeah.
someone down for them to come up.
Yeah, and I would say that's most of the world. So that's really,
We're
really
on a
good to
mission.
know
We've
that.
got some work to do.
Got some work to do. Yes, exactly. That's awesome. You wrote a book called Man Alive, and it's helping explain a little bit about the book. I looked it up a little bit, but I bet you can explain a little bit better. It looked
It,
really
it,
cool.
it,
So,
it's a really easy, both my books are very, I suppose, simple and to the point. So doing that boxing program for years, because most men, well, maybe this is you, maybe it's not, they will start, but they don't follow through for a
mhm.
number of different reasons. So in that book, it goes for, there's a start and an end, but in the middle is a 21-day process. And over that 21 days, I basically over 10 years, I just pulled the best 21 stories, motivational stories out with so there's a short story and then there's a task. And what it will do over 21 days, it will show you your strengths. It will show you your best, maybe your gifts, your talents, the things that you're naturally good at. But then it will also show you maybe your shortcomings, maybe the things that you're being challenged with. And some of them are easy, some of them are not. I think it's about day 3 or 4, I forget now, but it says, it gives a motivational story. It's a bit about validation, about fathering, and it says to go and just ask 3 men what are some strengths that they see in you.
Hmm.
You know, and it's the amount of men who don't feel like they have 3 men they can ask.
Hmm.
Or they've got them, but they don't feel
Right, but they
like
wouldn't ask him that. Yeah.
yeah. It's like the amount of men that are like, hey, I'm going to skip this. I'll come back to that day.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's
awkward. Let's do the next
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
obviously, there's parts about being a son or being a father or being a husband
Hmm.
or in business. A great thing my dad taught me years ago, he goes, and this is something's been with me my whole life. I think he goes, a business that takes no inventory usually goes broke. Like if you don't know what's coming and going out, you don't know, you end up going
Right.
belly up. And that's what his knack was, buying businesses that were nearly broke. Not broke, but nearly. Whereas one of my first mentors said to me a similar thing. He said, most men don't take an inventory and end up a little bit broken or broken relationships or in some way a bit busted up. So in that book, that will show you your strengths and it'll show you maybe some of your blind spots.
Cool. I love that. Guys, reach out. We'll have all the information for Gavin, for his coaching, for his books. All that stuff will be in the show notes. I'm sure you can want to check it out, which will be awesome. In wrapping up, I always have three final questions and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners. First and final question, and this one fits in with what you talk about all the time, is if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
Focus on doing the things that you're naturally good at, the thing that gives you joy, that makes you smile, because you've got that thing for a reason.
Hmm. Cool.
That's
I
what
like that. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
favorite quote is from my grandmother, a little Scottish lady. She's passed away now. She had seven kids as well. She raised them basically on her own. My grandfather had his issues, but she would say in her Scottish accent, it's a good life if you don't weaken.
Can see her. I can picture this little Scottish grandma saying. Awesome. Third question. What's one word or sentence you want in your gravestone?
Uh, One word. I suppose a lot of the men that I coach, I say this a lot. There's more in you. You
That's
can
good.
do more, be more, become more. There's more in you. Yeah.
All right. We run into someone in the coffee shop. We talked about a lot today. I'm still like, this is really cool. The idea of creating versus competition. I've heard it before, but it was very tangible. I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, becoming that man that, talks to other men and builds that community. Talk about that. What's something we didn't touch on that you just think you really want to leave our listeners with?
I would love to give every listener something, man, woman, or child, because everyone knows some man they need that could improve. If you go to my website, Gavin Topp, double P, gavintop.com, I'd like to give every listener, it's the 8 biggest secrets successful men make.
Awesome. Cool.
Watch that video. It will say it of this is what it's told me. It saved marriages. So every wife, get this to your husband, your brother. It saved marriages. It's given men hope. So if you can avoid making these mistakes, please watch it. Gavintop.com.
Awesome. That link will be in the show notes. Make sure to click on it. Find that. Save the marriages in the people around you. If it's not yours, save someone else's. I love that. That's really cool. Thank you so much for being on. Guys, if we can go out there and share this, if we can go out there and help one person or one starfish at a time, together, we can help change the world. Thanks again, Gavin.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.